Hello everyone. Today we are going to read our chapter 2 New Kings and Kingdoms AD 700 to AD 1200. New words to remember. Tripartite. The struggle between Rashtrakutas, Pratiharas and Palas for control over Kannauj. The word tripartite means involving three parties. Secular, not connected with religious or spiritual matters. Clan, a group of close-knit and interrelated families. Johar, mass sacrifice undertaken by women to protect their honor. Feudatories, persons who hold land under the feudal system. The nobles got land from the king in exchange for military services. Rise of small kingdoms in the northern India. The history of India was marked by confusion and disorder after the death of Harshvardhan in AD 648. In the absence of a strong imperial power, India was divided into a number of small independent kingdoms. These kingdoms were governed by Rajput rulers. Some of these rulers had been feudatories of the existing kings. They used to fight for their overlord, the king, and supplied soldiers when the king went to war. Later, some of these feudal lords gained richness and strength. They became independent rulers. The Rajputs were known for their bravery, honesty, and courage. The Rajput kingdoms constantly fought with one another. Therefore, they failed to defend themselves against foreign invaders. Among the famous Rajput powers during the 9th century were the Palas of Bengal, the Pratiharas of Gujarat and Rajasthan, and the Rashtrakutas in the Deccan. They constantly fought with one another for the domination of northern India, particularly for the upper Gangetic Valley, which was rich and prosperous. We refer to this as the tripartite struggle. The tripartite struggle for Kannauj. The Palas, the Pratiharas, and the Rashtrakutas made Kannauj the test of their political power. Its location on the banks of river Ganga in Uttar Pradesh meant that whoever controlled Kannauj would be the master of the Gangetic Valley. The struggle for control over Kannauj came to be known as the tripartite struggle, that is, three-sided struggle. It lasted for more than a century from about AD 780 to AD 910. To begin with, the Pratihara ruler Vatsaraja fought against Dharmapala of Bengal and occupied Kannauj. But soon the Rashtrakuta ruler Dhruv defeated Vatsaraja and occupied Kannauj. However, when Dhruv returned to Deccan, Dharmapala occupied Kannauj again. He recovered all his lost territories. When Nagabhatta, the Pratihara ruler, tried to have control over the Gangetic Valley, his efforts were nullified by the intervention of Rashtrakuta ruler Govinda III. Thus, Dharmapala and his successors continued to rule over Kannauj. Around AD 836, a powerful Pratihara ruler Bhoj brought Kannauj under his control. His successors were weak. By 10th century AD, the Rashtrakutas gained control over Kannauj. They made Kannauj their capital. Effects of the conflict. The three kingdoms weakened as a result of continuous fight against one another. Later, the Rashtrakutas were subdued by the Chalukyas. The Palas were thrown out of power by the Senas. The Pratihara Empire disintegrated into a number of small kingdoms. Rashtrakutas. The Rashtrakutas in the Deccan were the feudatory chiefs of the Chalukyas of Karnataka. In AD 753, Danti Durga defeated the Chalukyas and founded the Rashtrakuta dynasty. He made himself the master of the Deccan. Their capital was Malkhed near Sholapur in Maharashtra. Danti Durga's successor Krishna I consolidated the Rashtrakuta Empire. He also built the Kailas temple at Ellora. Some of the important rulers of this dynasty were Dhruv, Amogharsh, and Krishna III. After the death of Krishna III, the Rashtrakuta power declined. Religion. The Rashtrakutas were patrons of Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and Jainism. They were tolerant towards other religions. They allowed Muslim traders to build mosques and settle in India. Palas of Bengal and Bihar. The Pala kingdom came into being in about AD 750. This dynasty was founded by Gopala. He was succeeded by Dharmpala AD 780 to AD 815. He could control the city of Kannauj for some time. Devpala, the son and successor of Dharmpala, annexed Assam and parts of Odisha. The Palas were soon defeated by the rulers of the Sena dynasty. In AD 1204, Bakhtiyar Khalji planned the conquest of Bengal, then ruled by Lakshman Sena. Bakhtiyar Khilji took possession of the capital town without any opposition. Later, he established himself at Lakhanauti near Gaur. Lakshman Sena took shelter in eastern Bengal, where he continued to rule for some time. Patrons of learning, religion, and art. The Palas were great promoters of religion, art, and literature. They were responsible for the spread of Mahayana Buddhism in Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, and Burma, Myanmar. Many Buddhist viharas were built during this period. Dharmpala improved the Nalanda University and also founded Vikramshila University. Devpala built the famous Mahabodhi temple at Gaya. The Palas maintained close trade links and cultural contacts with Southeast Asia. Gurjara-pratiharas. King Nagabhatta set up the Gurjar-Pratihara dynasty by defeating the Arabs in AD 738. King Bhoj AD 836 to 885 was the greatest ruler of this dynasty. His empire extended from Bihar in the east to Kathiawar in the west. Kannauj remained his capital for a very long time. His son Mahendrapal added parts of North Bihar to the Pratihara Empire. The Mahendrapal successors were weak. Mahmud of Ghazni invaded Kannauj in AD 1019. The city was conquered without much resistance. The four most important kingdoms that arose on the ruins of the Pratihara Empire were those of the Chauhans of Ajmer, the Chandelas of Bundelkhand, the Solankis of Gujarat, and the Parmars of Malwa. Patrons of art and learning. The Gurjar Pratiharas were also great patrons of learning and art. King Bhoj was learned king and just. Many stories are told of his wisdom and goodness. The Pratihara rulers decorated Kannauj with beautiful buildings and temples. They sent their ambassadors to Baghdad, present-day Iraq. This contact led to the promotion of Indian philosophy, science, astronomy, and mathematics in Western Asia. A Prashasti. A Prashasti is a piece of writing that praises someone highly. A Prashasti composed by a learned Brahmin speaks of the achievements of King Nagabhatta. It says that he won victory over the rulers of Kannauj, Bengal, Gujarat, Malwa, and many other kings of northern India. Chahmanas or Chauhans. Chahmanas had been the feudatory chiefs of the Pratiharas, the Parmaras, and the Chalukyas. There were many branches of Chahmanas who ruled from different centers like Jalore, Saipur, Jodhpur, Dholpur, and Ajmer. One of the famous Chauhan rulers was Prithviraj, also known as Rai Pithora. Chandra in his famous work Prithviraj Raso, described Prithviraj's military exploits. He ruled over vast territories extending from Ajmer to Delhi. In AD 1191, he defeated Muhammad Ghori in the Battle of Taran near Batenda. But he was defeated and killed at the Second Battle of Taran in AD 1192. This battle was landmark in the history of India. It laid the foundation of Turkish rule in northern India. Administration of the Rajput kingdoms. The only form of government known to these Rajput chiefs was monarchy. Kingship was hereditary. Many of the Rajput chiefs had assumed high sounding titles such as Maharaja Dhiraj, the ruler of rulers, or Tribhuvan Chakravarti, the master of three worlds. But in reality, the king's powers were restricted because of three reasons. First, the rulers depended on their feudatories or samantas who maintained troops and helped them in times of war. Secondly, they ruled according to the well established laws and traditions of the land. Thirdly, the learned Brahmins and the association of peasants and traders also prevented them from becoming too powerful. Finance and resources. There were many sources of income such as land revenue obtained from the peasants, taxes on goods carried by roads or on boats or ships, income from mines, and income from cattle keepers and artisans. Land revenue was usually one-sixth of the produce of the land. We do not know the rates of other taxes. Items of expenditure. The revenue generated from the above sources was used for the maintenance of the royal family and construction of temples and forts. They were also used to fight wars because of the Rajput chiefs were constantly fighting among themselves. The conquerors plundered the wealth of the defeated rulers. Economic condition, education, religion, architecture, and society. Economic condition. Agriculture continued to be the main occupation of the people. Many crafts had developed in the country. The Indian craftsmen excelled in the manufacture of silk, cotton, and woolen clothes. They were also good in woodwork and metalwork. Distribution of land among the Samantas resulted in the loss of revenue to the rulers. They could not maintain a large standing army and depended on their Samantas, feudal chiefs, in the times of war. India had trade links with West Asia and Southeast Asia. The main articles of exports were spices, metalworks, wood products, precious stones, silk, cotton, and woolen clothes. India imported hybrid horses from Arabia. Wealth was unevenly distributed. In fact, it was concentrated in the hands of a small minority. Education and learning. Education was confined mostly to the Brahmins and people of the upper castes. Schools were held in temples and mathas. The main subject taught were mathematics, grammar, philosophy, and religious texts. The Nalanda and the Vikramshila universities in Bihar grew to be the most famous universities of the early medieval period. Kalhana wrote Rastarangini in Sanskrit. It is supposed to be a reliable history of kings who ruled over Kashmir from ancient times to the early years of the 12th century. Religion. Buddhism was declining. Most of the kings of this period were the followers of the Hindu religion. They worshipped Shiva, Vishnu, and goddess Shakti. These kings, however, were very tolerant towards all religions. The Bhakti movement, led by Alvars, Vaishnav saints, and Nayanas, Shaiv saints in South, spread to North India. Architecture. Buddhism was still quite popular in eastern India, that is, in Bengal and Bihar. Jainism became popular among trading communities in western India. The Jain temples, Dilwara temples at Mount Abu, were decorated with beautiful statues and engravings. The famous statue of Gomateshwar at Sarvanabagola in Karnataka was constructed in about AD 983. Lingaraj temple at Bhubaneswar and Sun temple at Konark are excellent examples of the architecture of this period. Society. Caste system was gradually becoming rigid, but foreigners could become Hindus and got absorbed in the society. During this period, some of the Brahmins gave up their traditional vocation and took up arms, while some of the Kshatriyas lived as merchants. Gurjara-Pratihara Harishchandra, who was a Brahmin, took up the profession of arms. But on the whole, the Brahmins were a rich and powerful caste. Many of them were granted land by the king. Women of the upper classes were given good education. They took a prominent part in administration and social life. The practice of Swayamvara, choice of a husband, was known during this period. Many upper class people practiced polygamy. Turkish invasion. By the end of the 10th century, Turks had risen to power in Central Asia. The Turkish generals had proclaimed their control over many territories. Ghazni in Afghanistan had also come under the rule of one such Turkish general. Some of the most outstanding Turkish rulers of Ghazni was Mahmud. He had heard about the huge wealth stored in Indian temples. Mahmud, who had ascended the throne of Ghazni in AD 998, began to raid India frequently. Between AD 1000 and AD 1025, he invaded India 17 times and plundered the North Indian temples at Mathura and Kannauj. He also plundered Somnath temple in Gujarat in AD 1025. He got immense wealth, jewelry and precious stones which he took to Ghazni. Even the gateway of Somnath temple was taken to Ghazni. Effects of Mahmud Ghazni's raids. Mahmud's raids had the following effects on India and the city of Ghazni. Annexation of Multan. In AD 1006, Mahmud marched up to Multan, which he conquered. Multan became a part of Mahmud's wide kingdom. Plunder and loot. Thousands of people were killed during the raids made by Mahmud. He attacked and plundered Nagarkot, Kangra, Taneshwar, Mathura, and Kannauj. He was known as the idol breaker. He indulged in massacre wherever he went. Beautified the city of Ghazni. Mahmud used this wealth to build palaces, mosques, schools, and libraries in Ghazni. Many scholars lived at his court. Firdausi wrote the great Persian epic Shahnama, which is an account of Mahmud's life and his times. Al-Biruni, a great scholar, visited India during this period. Migration of people in large number. Mahmud's invasions opened India to migration of people who came as soldiers, traders, and workers. Many Muslim preachers also entered India. Many Sufi saints from Iran came to India. They preached love and devotion to God. Mahmud had no ambition to set up an empire in India. He died in AD 1030. The empire of Ghazni disintegrated rapidly after Mahmud's death. For about 150 years, India was free from foreign attacks after his death. Muhammad Ghori's invasions. Muhammad was the ruler of a small kingdom of Ghor in Afghanistan. In AD 1173, he captured Ghazni and then he turned towards India. His aim of invading India was different from that of Mahmud of Ghazni. His objective was not to loot and plunder but to conquer India. His first invasion was directed against Multan. In AD 1179, he captured Peshawar. By AD 1191, Multan, Sindh, and Lahore became parts of the empire of Muhammad Ghori. As he crossed Punjab, he was opposed by Prithviraj Chauhan, the Rajput ruler of Delhi and Ajmer. In the First Battle of Taran in AD 1191, Muhammad Ghori was defeated. But in AD 1192, he came back to avenge his defeat. Prithviraj organized a confederacy of Rajput chiefs to meet the challenge, but Jaichand, the ruler of Kannauj, refused to help him. In the Second Battle of Taran, Prithviraj was defeated and killed. After this remarkable success, Muhammad Ghori returned to Ghazni, leaving his slave Qutbuddin Aibak in charge of his new conquest. In AD 1194, Ghori defeated Jaichand of Kannauj at the Battle of Chandwar. Muhammad Ghori returned to Ghazni. The next 3 or 4 years were utilized by Qutbuddin Aibak in conquering many other territories such as Mathura, Gwalior, Bundelkhand and Malwa. Another general of Muhammad Ghori, Bakhtiyar Khalji, conquered Bengal and Bihar. Thus, within a short period of time, a large part of northern India fell under the control of the Turkish invaders. In AD 1206, Muhammad Ghori was murdered. He had no son, hence his empire passed into the hands of his generals. At Ghazni, he was succeeded by Alauddin, who was soon displaced by another general. In India, he was succeeded by Qutbuddin Aibak. He laid the foundation of a new dynasty known as the Slave Dynasty. Causes for defeat of the Rajputs. Disunity among the Rajputs was the most important reason for their defeat. The Turks were military superior to the Rajputs. They used horses which moved very swiftly when compared to elephants used by the Rajputs. The Turks had better planning and strategy. The Rajputs constantly fought among themselves and did nothing to equip themselves with better weapons and tactics. The rulers had no standing armies, they had to depend on their feudal lords. The Turkish invasion failed to arouse national consciousness in India. The masses did not really cooperate with the rulers. The Turks were inspired by the great religious enthusiasm. They believed that their victory would help in spreading Islam in India. This was our chapter 2, New Kings and Kingdoms. If you have any doubt or query, you can ask me in the comment box below. Thank you everyone.